Oh Seven Citizens Black here from Castle Black Gaming, and today I wanted to go a little deeper and maybe put on our thinking and theorizing hats on the recent news in regards to the new soft deaths that ships will face in the upcoming 3.18 patch, centering around the cargo refactor. Before we get to that though, if you like what I do and have visited this channel more than once, consider subscribing and also like the videos and join in the conversation in the comments below. And so with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and get to the good stuff. Alright, so to begin with, for those who don't know, lead designer of the cargo refactor for CIG, Dan Griffiths, held an AMA this week answering various questions about the upcoming cargo refactor for update 3.18. And while most of the information given was pretty standard stuff explaining the ins and outs of how cargo would be handled during transactions, it was an answer concerning other players being able to board ships to retrieve cargo that prompted Dan to drop a seemingly mundane bit of info, but when thought about in a larger context, seems like it has the ability to change much about how we play while in our ships, and not just in regards to cargo. So what was this new feature? Well, Dan told us that starting in 3.18, when a ship's health reaches 0, the ship will now have a 70% chance to go into a soft death status, which in his own terms means that the interior, the cargo, and the players on board will still be intact or alive, and you will be able to move within your ship, and the cargo will be intact as well, and able to be handled through tractor beams. So for an example, in simple terms, let's just say you're in your Cutlass Black with a full load of cargo, and you're attacked, and your ship is brought down to this soft death, meaning your Cutlass is now just a piece of floating space debris. Instead of blowing up and you dying and your contents being ejected out into space or on a planet or moon, if that's where this happens, you will instead be alive and be able to roam about the inside of your ship. However, we don't really have any details on how this will work on a planet. Now at first glance, this seems kind of limiting, and if you're thinking about being a pirate and coming on board to steal the loot as the only bit of gameplay this offers, then you're not quite seeing the big picture here, but let's just say that that is the scenario in your mind. There you are with your dead-end spaceship with your cargo. Now what do? Well, hopefully you have some weapons so you can defend your ship and cargo, with which could result in some FPS fighting either on your ship or even outside in space. Maybe you sneak out of one of the side airlocks and over to their ship and hijack it, or maybe there's an EVA fight that breaks out. Perhaps you survive floating in space but injured. Does this not bring about possible medical gameplay rescue as well? And if you are the pirate and are able to take control of the disabled ship, do you call in your salvaging buddies to come strip the hull while you're tractor beaming out all the cargo? What about bounty hunting? If you happen to be out trying to get a player who has a bounty on their head and disable their ship and they don't actually combat log, it would then turn into an FPS fight either on or outside the ship, which again will add a new element to how you do things while in your ship. And all of this without further updates, which will only expand on this, but we will get to those in a bit. Let's talk about something else though involving bounty hunting, that being NPCs. I don't believe it was mentioned whether or not NPC ships will also fall into the 70% soft death category. So what if you're chasing one of those bounties and their ship does not blow up? That means you might have to finish off the remainder of the ships in the area and then have to go back after your target manually, which is definitely the direction the game is headed into for capturing live bounties. And even though we might be seeing the Vault stun gun that has been teased, which is a disabling gun and not one that kills, possibly in 3.18, that does not mean that all the other features are in place to capture live bounties, as we'll learn later. But this clearly looks like the direction we are headed in. Again though, will we be able to go after NPCs bounties in this update, or will the 70% thing be turned off for those ships and they simply still explode? This is a question I'm eager to get the answer for. Also, the question of if we can continue to shoot a disabled ship to actually make it explode to finish it off is another question I have, and more gameplay that is something to think about. Now do keep in mind that the 70% soft death feature is something that is only temporary until the physicalized damage and engineering comes online, but it is the next step in this and will prepare us for how ships will have more gameplay even as a broken down hull. There are so many very exciting possibilities with ships in particular on their way over the next few updates. Now, we have touched on some of these possibilities already, but with a few more updates after this that will build on what we get with 3.18, we have even more awesome things to look forward to, such as those ships becoming battlegrounds with even more options to fight back. Now, the larger ships like the Carrack will especially be interesting to see how FPS can come into play, not to mention there will be breaching of ships coming, which will create more opportunities to be more on the offensive side when trying to capture the cargo or those inside. Ships like the Carrack could provide hours of good battles that are more in the sandbox form of gameplay and be more engaging than any of the events we currently have in game. A disabled Carrack could have backup on the way, which means they only need to hold off an invasive attempt long enough for someone to arrive, and then even more fighting can commence. Also, with live bounties coming, I think next year this is going to create insane opportunities and much more nuanced gameplay, and maybe even more of that chase type of gameplay many will enjoy, no matter whether you are the pursuer or the pursued. I know we seem to be an update or two from truly great things at all times, but we've seen some of these tools being worked on for well over a year now, such as those breaching tools, the stun guns, and even hints at holding players or NPCs captive. Now, of course, the biggest change coming will be the engineering gameplay, which will allow for ships to be repaired in real time as players are racing to try and overtake a ship or keep from being overtaken. Gravity controls, fire, climate controls, and oxygen are all things that have been shown off recently at CitizenCon, and while they're not in game yet, it gives you a good idea of how ships are going to be the next huge gameplay time sink for players, which will move them from being just vehicles to perform a task like traveling or fighting or gathering into real battlegrounds. And while the majority of skirmishes might just be smaller entanglements, there will be full on-scale battles when it comes to larger orgs with hammerheads, C2s, and Carracks that will provide multi-level ship fights that will be multi-layered gameplay within, whether you're trying to defend the hulls of your ship with guns or you're trying to quickly fix your quantum drive to get the hell out of there before you lose your ship, not to mention fighting off saboteurs who are racing to prevent you from making such repairs. Also, looking a little closer to this update, cutting tier 2 is scheduled to complete by next summer, which will also play into disabled ships and the next steps of salvaging. So again, even more things coming which will change ship to ship interactions for good. And let's not forget that around next summer or a little after, we get ship tractor beams and the little tugboat ship, the Argo SRV, which will also help play a part in the disabled ship gameplay, because with repair coming soon after as well, you're looking at defending your ship to not lose it, but to try and keep it and retain your cargo and everything in it, which ups those stakes, because when you have hope that you can get the ship back up and running, then you have more to fight for instead of just taking a loss and respawning back at your nearest station to reclaim your ship. There's some very exciting opportunities coming, and I'm looking forward to them. Alright, so that's going to do it for this video on what we can look forward to in regards to the vehicle soft deaths that are slated to arrive with 3.18. Now, even though this feature was buried and lumped in with Cargo Refactor, it truly is a feature all on its own, and one that I think might be bigger than the actual Cargo Refactor and even salvaging itself, because this will affect more people than those who might be partaking in those specific things. The Cargo Refactor in this early iteration is not the great cargo experience we have been waiting for, just as the Tier 0 feature of salvaging is not the salvaging we are truly hyped for, but opening up our ships to not explode on death will be something that will happen to everyone and will provide more than just an explosive death, but a little bit of hope. And with that hope will spring forth more gameplay than scraping a silly hull for some materials you can sell for probably too little profit. Now, I've spoken long enough here though, and I did want to hear what you think. Has this new feature sparked something in your imagination that I didn't think of? What are you looking forward to in terms of this feature or even further down the road? I gotta hear from you guys. Anyway, remember to be kind to your fellow gamer. Hope can be a powerful thing. I mean, how else do you think CIG raised over $500 million? And stay positive, citizens.